Hey everyone, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I talk about the last 10 new to me board games that I've played and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite, no matter what types of games they are. Now before I get into the 11 games on this episode, because I got one bonus edition, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so to start things off, I want to give an honourable mention to Wizards of the Grimoire Shifting Sands. Now, the reason I haven't put this one on the 10 ranked games is because it is so similar to the original Wizards of the Grimoire, which I like a lot. It does have a chairman's commendation, so it is quite highly revered by me. But if you like a little two-player head-to-head dueling game that's very deterministic, then give this one a look. At number 10, I have Dawn. Now, Dawn is a kind of a semi-cooperative game with the hidden traitor element, as you're trying to complete these different missions by contributing cards to a pile. You're going to put them face down, but you could be putting bad cards down or cards that aren't so good for the overall cause. Now, with a lot of other social deduction games, this one you can be a traitor, and this one, the kind of unique thing about it is that you can voluntarily become a traitor or voluntarily not become a traitor, and you can even change back and forth as you go. So you do have that freedom of what you want to do. You know, are you going to turn your back on the team and thinking that the overall mission is a lost cause, therefore you want to be the player with the most of these kind of traitor points in order to do that? Or are you going to stay true and loyal, and hopefully you can pull off this big feat of strength amongst you all? Now, I wasn't actually expecting much going into this one, especially because I did play it with such low player counts, but it worked remarkably well. And I should say that each of these 10 games I think are all really good, actually. So the base level here is at least a 6 out of 10. So we have a strong category of games this episode. But if you like that mechanism, which has been used in so many games, you know, your Secret Hitlers, your Resistance Avalons, even games like Dead of Winter use this mechanism. This is kind of the core focus on this game, and it works way better than it should do. And I'm quite looking forward to trying it with more players than just the 3 that we played it with. At number 9, I have Time's Up, a classic party game that I've only just managed to get to the table. This one is a twist on the charades mechanism, but this one, you have 3 rounds. The first round you can kind of say whatever you want in order to get your teammates to guess the correct person or thing that you're pointing towards. The second round, you're going to use the same cards, but you can only use one word. And then in the third round, you can only use actions. So it kind of uses a bit of memory into this game, which obviously makes things funny as you start to associate things to these certain celebrities or people from history. Very simple stuff, and there's tons of variations of this game out there, but I'm glad I finally got this one played. Out of all the party games I have, I think this one does require more outgoing people, if you, especially if you want to be in the hot seat and do the actions and things, because there is quite a lot of pressure and a lot of people aren't going to like that. But if your group can handle that, then this one is definitely going to be worth the effort, and it's guaranteed going to bring you some laughs. At number 8, I have another party game with herd mentality. This one is ultra simple game, you know, as simple as it gets, where you're going to get given a question. Everybody's going to write the answer to that question. You're going to present them all, and whoever's on the most popular side, as in if you've written the same thing as the most other people have, then you're going to get some points. That's pretty much the gist of the game. There are very similar games out there to this one as well, such as Green Team Wins. I prefer this one because it is a bit more British in the way that the questions are worded and things, and the subject matter. But I like it. This is completely inoffensive, and you can play it with big groups. And again, anybody can jump in and join in and have a good time with this one. So that is herd mentality at number 8. At number 7, I have Roll to the Top, which is one of the simpler roll and write style games that I've played in some time. This one, you're just rolling a big cluster of different types of dice. You've got D4s, you've got D6s, D10s, D20s, and you are essentially trying to build up these buildings from ground level up to the top and race to the top. If you're the first to fill in every single box, then you'll be the winner. But every time you place these numbers in these boxes by taking those numbers from these dice, by taking them individually or combining them together, the next ones above it have to be an equal or higher number to it. So as you can probably imagine, as more higher numbers are rolled, then you are somewhat dependent on higher rolls being made in the future. And that is probably when the top of the picture is going to start coming into play. So, very simple stuff, but it's quite fun when you manage to spread the numbers quite evenly and combo tons of things by dividing up the dice accordingly and get lots of boxes ticked off at once. So, nice stuff. I've only tried one of the maps. There's tons of maps here, but very simple stuff that you can happily get this onto the table with very little effort or setup. At number 6, I have Big Boss. Now, this is essentially Wolfgang Kramer's take on the classic economic game Acquire. So you are essentially spreading these big organizations out on this map. Now, unlike Acquire, this one is not a grid. It's actually literally like a pathway where the buildings start spreading out kind of horizontally and will eventually start encroaching on each other. And the bigger companies will swallow the smaller companies, and then dividends are paid out depending on investments you've made. This is 80% the same as Acquire. There's a few little tweaks that are different, but I'd say if you've played Acquire, you've pretty much played this one. Now, I personally happen to be a fan of Acquire. I think it's a good game. I think this one suffered a lot of the similar problems that Acquire did, and that is it drags on a bit too long, and the conclusion of the game is just a bit too drawn out, even if you know that somebody is probably going to win way beforehand. So it's a good game. This one dates back to 1994, and it has aged well, but I think I like a bit more punchy, a bit more succinct economic games. So I think for that reason, despite me really enjoying the gameplay, I think I'm going to struggle to get it back to the table because that length of the game is just a bit too long for me and my gaming group. At number 5, I have Comprom Mat. Now, Comprom Mat is a twist on the blackjack mechanism where you're trying to play cards out and not go bust by going over 21. But in this one, instead of just trying not to go bust, and get closer to 21 than your opponent does, this one you are bidding for these kind of points cards, or you're also bidding for these kind of special ability cards that can help you down the line. And it's all about how to, which risk you're going to take, and you are using that deck of cards for all of the different cards that you're bidding for. So it is a kind of, it's a sidestep from a game like blackjack where the mechanisms are exactly the same, but I think this new take on it is really well done. It's quite a sick little game. It takes about 20 minutes to play. Some of the powers are very interesting that will get you out of kind of sticky situations. And all in all, I was left quite impressed by this one. I wasn't expecting much from it because I picked it up for next to nothing at the UK Games Expo, and it left me feeling pretty impressed when I finished with it. So that is Comprom Mat at number 5. At number 4, I have Trio, also known as Nana. Now, this is a kind of silly little memory style game that works surprisingly well. So in this one, all you're doing is that you have a hand of cards, and they are going to go into a fixed order from lowest to highest. And on your turn, you are going to ask another player what is either the highest card in their hand or the lowest card in their hand. And what you're trying to do is that you are trying to create groups of 3 of these cards by asking the right players where these cards are. Because if you get 3 the same, you're going to score one of these sets. I think it's the first of 3 sets will be the winner. Or if you're the first player to find the 7s, then you'll automatically win the game. But the twist on this one is that when you break that pattern, so say I asked one person what their lowest number was and they said a 1, and I asked the next person what their lowest card is and they say a 2, because they're not the same, they're going to pick up their cards back into the hand and it's going to move on to the next player. So the more you play this one, the more information is going to become available, but you do have to remember it because it's not public and it's not visible throughout the game. Again, very quick, this one takes around 15 minutes to play, extremely accessible. If you don't like memory games, I think you could still like this one. I'm not a big fan of memory games, but this works very well. And it's satisfying when you hunt out those cards and hunt out those groups. And this one seems to have got a bit of a cult following over the last year or so. And I can see why, because it really does hit this sweet spot of feeling like you've accomplished something when you find those trios, but still being very accessible. So that is Trio at number 4. At number 3, I have 5 Towers. Now, this is a brand new card game, a small box card game, as you are trying to build these 5 towers, believe it or not. And you're going to do that through this pretty unique bidding system, where each round there's going to be a number of cards that come out, 5 I believe, and you are going to say how many of these cards you are willing to take. And if nobody can trump you, then you will take the cards and you'll add them to your towers. But the twist on this one is that you can only ever start from a high number and work down. And of course, you don't want to be creating those huge gaps in between those towers because you're going to be unable to fill them back in unless you actually do this additional mechanism where you shed these cards but suffer negative points for doing so. I do like this kind of pacing thing. And there's a few little twists in the game as well where I think you can place any card on top of an 8, or a 9 can go on top of any card, or some combination of that. So you do have a little get out of jail free card to get you out of sticky situations. But again, you still do have to be very careful and not cut yourself off too short. But dragging on too long can also be a problem because the final piece of the tower actually doubles the value of that tower. So again, that kind of push and pull mechanism works really well. And again, I do like that bidding system where you don't have a currency, you're just saying how many of the cards you're willing to take. And sometimes making that decision and weight it just correctly can be quite difficult because sometimes people can take cards that you cannot take and they might get a good deal out of doing that. So hence why you need to pace yourself quite carefully. But this was a good one. It feels quite fresh, familiar in a way because it's just stacking cards on top of each other, but it works well. So that is 5 towers at number 3. Okay, so the top 2 games are going to earn my chairman's commendation, and the first of the two, at number 2, is Tiwanaku. So Tiwanaku is a deduction style game with a kind of a feeling of Minesweeper as you're moving these meeples around this grid, discovering terrain, and hopefully trying to find the crop types on those terrain. And the way you're going to discover that is through pure deduction, logical deduction, because each of these crop types cannot be next to one of the same. And it kind of corresponds to the terrain type, or the size of the terrain, because say you had a group of 3 mountain terrain, you know that within that 3 terrain you've got a level 1 crop, a level 2 crop, and a level 3 crop, meaning that you can automatically rule out the 4 and the 5. Easier to explain in person if you're playing the game than it is just verbally. But the logic in this game is very simple, but the gameplay is amplified because of the presence on the board, because you actually have to move your meeples around and you cannot move or pass through other players, meaning that sometimes you can just sit on a spot and reserve it for yourself, try to find out other information so that you know that the information that you need for that particular tile. So there is this kind of chicken mechanisms at time where sometimes you are encouraged or you feel the urge to take a big gamble to get these big points, but doing so will create a whole kind of domino effect on revealing other information on the board. A nice little device as well to show you to show the answer to the puzzle. Now it all comes together in a very clean package, and I enjoyed it a lot. So looking forward to playing this one some more. You can play a long scenario or a short scenario. I think maybe in the middle would have been nice, but maybe for our first game or first couple of games, we were just kind of feeling out the process and kind of gaining our bearings really. So hopefully the follow-up games will be a little bit faster, because that would be my only small nitpick, was that it dragged on a little bit too long. But the gameplay itself was really enjoyable, and I can see this one being somewhat of an evergreen. So that is Tiwanaku at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Nar. Now, Nar is a little card drafting and engine building game as you are building up these columns of Vikings through this quite cool drafting system where by playing a Viking, the colour of the one you've just played will determine the next card you can pick up. So I like that extra restrictiveness in this game. And every time you play a card of the same type, you're going to trigger all the cards you've already played of that colour and get some really powerful bonuses, start generating new points, generating you these little kind of rule-breaking tokens, or even letting you climb up a track which will start generating you points passively, where whenever it's your turn you'll just get a point or 2 for doing so. Very smooth game. I like the way that you can take different approaches here, because you can focus on building those columns, you can focus on climbing that track, or you can focus on getting these kind of cargo ship cards by kind of discarding the cards from your engine in order to pick these cards up, get a big chunk of points and get some follow-up bonuses as well. Very refined. I was super impressed. I like the racing mechanism here, because it is a race to get to a certain amount of points, meaning that it always feels tense. It feels like you're always the forward momentum comes through strongly is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, very impressed with this one. Gorgeous artwork, lovely production, and this one just came out of nowhere and was a home run for me. So I have reviewed this one already, so please be sure to check out that review for some more detailed thoughts, but I liked it a hell of a lot, and it's going to be a contender for Game of the Year for me, at least be in that top 5 or so. So that is NAR at number 1. So there we have it, that concludes the video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it and discovered a new game or two. Now if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.